And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. Welcome to the Reasonably Fine Art Talk. This is your friend Charlie Hunter in Bellows Falls, Vermont. It's a beautiful day up here in Bellows Falls. Cat Charbonneau is out on his rounds, but hopefully he'll come by and see us during this. And the great Betty Sue is in Charleston, South Carolina last night, Athens, Georgia tonight. I'm heading toward Nashville. Any of you out in Nashville, be sure to be on the lookout for Betty Sue on tour with James McMurtry. Today, a very, very special guest, one of my favorite human beings I have met on this circuit, the wonderful, astonishing Stewart White. Stewart, how are you?
I'm fine, Charlie. Thank you for having me on your show.
See, I'm just saying those nice things because you're wearing the correct T-shirt. Want to show that off? Uh-huh.
Yes, I'm very proud of the shirt.
Did I send you that one? Was that after Door County, or did you buy that?
No, I think somebody left it in a theater at the Avalon, and I just grabbed it.
Excellent. So, Stewart, tell us, for those who may not be familiar with your work, what has been the story arc of how you've ended up doing what you do?
Oh, the story arc. Well, I just love objects and painting and drawing. I think I had a very influential high school art teacher that saw something in what I was doing, advised me to maybe keep my signature a little bit smaller than what it was.
And good advice, always good advice. Yeah.
And just these really great, so we'll get into a little bit later on about drawing your hands, drawing your feet, drawing your sneakers, drawing. And I was in Kentucky back then, and Andrew Wyeth, of course, is like the favorite painter of that region, and I can see why, just because of the textures of all the trees and the grasses, and those were things to draw.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I wanted to do. And but in a very, very roundabout way, making a living. I've done a lot of different things, and found myself getting a job as an architectural illustrator.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really nice career, lasted about 20 years, and then recently retired. And so I still do some architectural work, but it's a different hat to wear.
I would think it'd be almost entirely a different hat to wear, because you've got to be depicting what the client wants, as opposed to all the lying that we can do as plein air painters. So,
but we do some line in architecture as well.
I don't want to know about it. So, Stuart, why don't we start out with looking at some of the art? Because I think we start out with a piece of architectural illustration. Tell us the story.
Okay, this is what is an example of an aerial perspective. It gives a client, of course, an overview of the project. This is a private school in the Georgetown area of Washington, D.C., Sidwell Friends. And we were proposing to build a parking lot underneath where you see the tennis courts and the quad, and among other buildings that we mixed in with the existing buildings. And these pictures like this, these illustrations, give the client something to, like, oh, I see it now, and the architect something to talk about and go over and everything else. But
now, did you work for a specific firm, or were you a freelancer who?
This one I was an in-house illustrator.
Okay. Yeah. Now, do those positions still exist, or is architectural illustration the same thing that has happened with the old commercial illustrators, that it got eaten by the computer?
Absolutely right, Charlie. It got really taken over by the computer. And what is very rare to be an in-house illustrator these days. So I was very fortunate that the principals at the firm saw some possibilities there. But I also had acquired a little bit of language about planning and building, and could actually inform the design direction.
Wow.
and yeah, when they give me a chance, I'll sit
You weren't just having to parrot what was given to you. You could say, "Guys, do you really want to do such and such?"
exactly. It's something like that. I mean, it's not an unusual possibility. Not to compare myself with the Renaissance artists, but they're pretty adept at painting, sculpture, uh,
Mhm.
designing, architecture, space planning, urban planning. I mean, it's I think Rubens is one of those characters. He became an ambassador to,
Really? Huh.
uh, Holland.
Caravaggio didn't. Caravaggio would not be someone you'd want to have as an ambassador.
No, no, not my first choice. Maybe not even on the entertainment committee.
Just generally, and just keep them away from the punch bowl. Now, Stuart, as people, uh, we've got a bunch of people who've checked in and saying hi. And folks, as you have questions as Stuart talks, I'll be monitoring the comments. So if you've got a question, just put it in there, and we will put it up on screen. So let's move to the next slide here. Now this is entire totally different world, Stuart. Totally different world. Tell us about this.
It is, but it ties in through like what light does on form. I love to travel, and when I travel, I have watercolor sketchbook. It's not a very elaborate setup, but you can sit down and just start painting things. And I wanted to include the informality of just a quick sketch. That's another painter, Mick McAndrews, in the shadows there, and I love looking at these things because the sketching outdoors stops you from the sort of brevity of a snapshot that you may never go back and look at in your camera or anything
Mhm.
like that. There's just uh, I can look at this and I can remember everything that's going on around me and how things feel. So that's the beauty. I encourage my students uh, to sketch and draw all the time and to not use these things as museum quality paintings.
Right.
Um,
It's funny. I think Dave Santianis last week we were talking about that exact thing that you remember the day. Is oh gosh, it was humid that day, or oh there were so many flies there, or I parked next to something that had died. The thing that's beautiful on this is your handling of light. I'm going to flip back to the architectural drawing for a moment, because the architectural drawing certainly has light and gives a sense of direction, but the image is really in service to the plan. You are truly illustrating here, whereas this is much more about your experience as the witness to this scene, it seems to me.
You're exactly right. Um, that's all that a painting is about, really, isn't it, Charlie? About the light.
Right, light and shape. That's yeah, because when you squint down, everything becomes, especially when you've got a flat plane, predominantly flat plane like this, it really does become a series of light dark interplays and shapes, you know, bouncing off one another, so that the shadow cast by the lintel over there on the upper right, the things poking out of it, the sticks poking out of it, they refer to the aqua uh, fence over there on the left. I mean, it's all a dance of form and shape. And I think you can't get that facile without doing it a lot. I mean, this is so much more sophisticated than the first glance at it might look, it seems to me.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, Stuart? How do you like them apples?
Well, I think that is you should be giving tours in museums, with a crowd around you and pointing things out to people. I think that would be another call.
You didn't think that was full of hooey, though, what I was saying?
No, not at all. I like you say, it's I do feel a lot of times when you're judging, you judge shows, I judge shows, we judge our own work. That we're trying to, I'm attracted to a painting that shows that kind of light, and you can, no matter how large the painting is, you can be drawn across the room if it has that little punch, something. I remember being at the Brooklyn Museum looking at some Sargent watercolors, and 3 rooms down there was a painting of his quarry studies. So I mean, just warm and cool shapes, very light, very pale, and everything else. But something about it is like, I've got to get down to the end of that room and look at that painting. And this is just an abstraction, really. It's all just abstract, but so full of compelling forms that I just wanted to look at that, move on to the next one, move on to this one. And many things aren't as conscious; they just happen to be there, a certain sign or something like that. And then later you say, you know what, that actually has a certain underlying geometry that threads this whole thing together. And I think studying design and composition, and where a window should be placed, or something, or is those sort of things that there are rules to, but sometimes it's really an intuitive thing.
It's intuitive it is intuitive after a while. And initially, my sense is initially you've got to kind of put what's there down rather than trying to think about it too much. And then as you get more and more used to image making, you start developing the intuitive sense of design. That's because one of the things that drives me crazy is when I'll get asked to do a workshop. Your compositions are so good, Charlie. Can you do a 3-day workshop on composition? No, you can't do a 3-day workshop on composition because it comes out of having done something 80 million times. I mean, all the looking at what you've chosen to emphasize in this, I think, is very, very telling. That you've got the oval shape in the upper left and that shadow cast by the oval shape against the white. Yeah, I'm sure reality did have that component to it, but you've decided to push that, and you've certainly let go of detail in the dark shadows. The dark shadows are just a shape with the human outline in there. But how you are organizing the dance, that's come from years and years of practice dancing, I think.
Laugh because I just finished doing a class at the academy called composition. It was 3 days.
And did they get it? Did you teach them?
Just the basics, the very basics of work small, and if you're painting, it looks like something you want to get closer, like at postage stamp size, do that composition. And if you look at a lot of like stamp albums and things like that, some of them jump out to you, and they're because of good design and good composition. And so I'd say, look, if it works at that scale, it's probably going to work at a larger scale. So
that's interesting. And did you come up with that concept on your own, or did you
I just read that somewhere? The thumbnail sketch, but
the thumbnail, but postage size thumbnails, those are
yeah, postage, or maybe more business card, if I can say that.
Okay, business card. Well, in that case.
No, there was a painter named Evans. I don't know if he's still alive, but he did postage stamp albums. Every page was hand painted in watercolor. Every painting was a little thing. He created the countries and created the worlds. And he had all those beautiful colored inks that the old American stamps used to have, and you didn't need, they were just compelling images inside those stamps. So there's something to the mini study that can make you feel at least this will probably work if I do it at larger size.
That's a great bit of advice. So now next slide, please, Charles. Here we've got some shoes, and this is egg tempera. So after the first two, which are watercolor, we've now moved on to a completely opaque. Egg tempera is pretty much completely opaque, right?
Opaque. Yeah, it's It's opaque and it's flat like gouache. And I got into it kind of through COVID. Some of the many hidden blessings of pandemics was something that I had always been like, I don't think I want to get involved in another medium. But I was good enough for Andrew Wyeth. He kept at it, liked it, and I thought, well, it's how difficult can it be? And it was. I found it to be really, really a great thing to do if you had a lot of time on your hands. This is basically goes back to my high school teachers study, do drawings of things that are around you, do common things, and then go from there because you learn so much about shape, shadow, highlights. And then there's certain love of the object, which I'm seduced by. I really like look at things that are if it's a bowl of cereal, if it's anything. There's something about the exercise of just doing your still life of common objects. These shoes I particularly like. These are work boots of mine, and I wanted to emphasize some of the texture of leather,
Mm-hmm.
and then the sort of the way that the laces interact with each other. And it's not photographic, but it has solidity and form to it. And I'll never get tired of doing these sort of things, even though it's not really uh, like my watercolor style. It's just another road that I'm traveling on.
Well, in my experience, seeing when you mix it up with other media than watercolor, you really are doing that to celebrate that media. I mean, you're not trying to make the same picture, but just doing it in oil.
Yeah.
You're really because your oils are sometimes very kind of built up, which certainly isn't the case with watercolor. But I think this is just an extraordinary painting. I'm particularly interested in the background, which seems so much more gestural than most of what I ever see with egg tempera. Egg tempera is always is so often so tightly rendered. Um, the whole right hand side of this looks almost like dry brushed. What was going on?
Yeah, Charlie, I'm glad you brought that up. I think you enjoy those early stages of a painting when you're working with your water soluble oils, uh, and you're doing certain things to them, and you bring certain things into focus. But then there's this sort of like, well, maybe that's a hands off area just because of the looseness of it, the roughness of it, the suggestion that
Mhm.
something might be going on. And that's the sort of same thing I do. I tend to keep going further with the egg tempera and go take the whole painting corner to corner. But in this particular example, I thought like I accomplished what I wanted to do, which was forms that sort of come out of a two-dimensional flat white board. And as I think your friend Richard Schmidt does that really nicely with this sort of loose brushwork, and then flower forms start to come out uh,
Right.
in there. And so, what is it about that that makes those flower forms seem so much more dimensional? Because they're laying in a lot of swishy burnt sienna brushwork, and there's something about it that I like.
It's really beautiful. It's really beautiful, and the tongue of that boot on the left against the very similar burnt sienna tone behind it. It the mastery going on here is really pretty extraordinary. Because I mean that's almost photographic. The top of the tongue, whereas let's say the shadows, the area between the soles, the darkest darks is much more painterly. There's just a wonderful range of expression in this piece, and yet it all holds together.
I appreciate you saying that. I think when you're painting, you never stop thinking about what you're doing. There's a lot of well, here's my subject, and then I'm just going to paint all these trees that are in the background, and you swish them in there, and those happen to be the sort of the weakest part of the painting. And I think you're good at this. It's just to consider the painting, from corner to corner. Is this an edge you want to keep? Is this an edge you want to lose? Is this something you want to suggest? Is this something you want to define? And the design and there's a good word for it. Strategic thinking, critical thinking in a painting is something that I never get tired of. It's all encompassing, the process of painting. Even if you just, like say, you stick with one color, and you've told me a long time ago, it's like, I'm not that good with chroma, so I'm sticking with sepia. I'm sticking with these earth tones, so I can focus on other things and not be distracted by the chroma. And my first thought was cop out, and then that started to sink in. I said, that makes so much sense. It just makes so much sense to, like, there is what's that word? There is sin enough in the day to keep you occupied with
Hmm.
saving people or something. There's enough problems in a painting that
Right.
you don't have to add more to it. If you can.
Right. Well, it's just like a short story. You don't have to use every adjective in the dictionary when you're writing a short story. But so Derek had asked if did you start with a pencil drawing to begin with in this piece, or did you just begin with the brush?
Yeah, I did. I just started with a pencil, and I put a few lines in there. I'm kind of a contour drawing guy. I had the line kind of goes all over the place, but I didn't want to lose my way when I was starting to do the laces. And when I say lose my way, it's like, oh, that lace doesn't even connect to anything. So when you're painting it, so I did do that. It's on a clay board, which is a product that Ampersand makes, and it's very, very slick. And that's what gives it that sort of brushiness at the early stages, and then you slowly let that dry, and it dries very quickly, and then you just keep building up tones. So it's a construction process.
Right.
I think people would enjoy it, but it's not as intimidating as you think. If you wanted to do Russian icons, or uh, altarpieces, or Van Eyck's, and actually Van Eyck was an oil painter, but you might enjoy that if you like small brush building up form. But I think it can be a lot more expressive as well.
No, that is one of the more expressive egg tempera pieces I've seen. Now we have someone who Donna asks if the shadow in the background is intentional. It looks to her like a shadow of a tractor, which fits well with the earth-worn boots. I don't really see the tractor that much, but I certainly see the colors that you've chosen as being utterly sympathetic to the utilitarian nature of the footwear.
Yeah, I think I like her comment there about I don't see the tractor either, but I kind of see some agri-industrial forms back there. But I would I didn't really make the connection on that. That just sort of happened as I'm moving the brush around,
Mhm.
and you can kind of erase things and pull things back, and it's just really finger painting for the first couple of stages of, like, pushing stuff around, and it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun to do that. But I appreciate that comment, because it's I love that painting can have unintentional consequences depending on who's just looking at it.
Absolutely. But as I look at this more, I'm just blown away by your mastery of edges. What you are, the way you are, making some edges so important, such as the top of the shoe that's on its side, and then you're letting go of the edges in a place like the I don't know parts of a shoe well enough, but the middle of the left-hand side, the edge of the shoe is not nearly as sharp against the background as it is over there on the right. I mean, it's really, this is an object lesson in someone totally in control of their craft. It's really fantastic.
Thank you. Just one tip on this. The blacks in there are done with a Prussian blue and a alizarin crimson.
Well,
And
so what is the palette here for those of us interested in such
yeah,
things?
some technical things. You know, we default to black sometimes for doing a lot of dark stuff, and I had the Prussian blue and the alizarin crimson pigments. You put them together, and they just become a warmer black or a cooler black,
Okay.
depending on how you play with it. And so that's one. The other is basically I got a giant container of brown from an estate sale from an artist that had passed away. And I don't even know what kind of brown it is, just powdered brown pigment. And it just seemed to be like, well, I'm going to use a lot of that because it's cheap. And then the other is just adding little bits of other warmer cool. You know,
Right.
I'm not a specific paint type guy, but it's you know, obviously I've got some maybe a little bit of red oxide and titanium white.
And egg tempera, you're working with powdered pigments, right?
Powdered pigment and egg yolk,
Right.
and a little bit of distilled water.
Right.
And you try to get it so that when it's all dry, you look at it, you don't have glossy and flat areas, but it's all sort of a satiny sheen to it. And that's just a little playing back and forth with your formula. Don't get it like in oil, don't get it too oily, don't get it too solvent. And you want to find that nice happy medium in there.
Well, is this piece available?
No, it was sold to someone in California who
Uh-huh.
delighted that she has it.
Well, if she decides she doesn't want it, let me know.
I got plenty of shoes and I can keep making more.
What do we got here? Oh, here we've got oil. This is a whole. This is 3 feet by 2 feet, and this is also a beautiful painting. Kills me.
Yeah. Okay. And you're right about the medium has a way of telling me this is what it likes to do. Not that that's the only thing it can do, but it likes to do this. And I think that
Like
oil,
Louis Kahn and bricks, right?
God,
Louis Kahn.
Charlie, brilliant. Who would have come up with that?
Well, it's exactly the same. The bricks say, "I like an arch."
What does an art brick want to do? I like an arch. Exactly. This is over at the Case and Cutter boat shop there in Oxford. You're familiar with, and it was
Every square inch of that place has been painted 16 times.
oh yeah, Jim McVicker, Charles Newman, all those guys.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
That's great. This was basically, again, it was like a breakup. I did a little small study. I said this could be okay, and it was all these different used boards sticking out of something, and then there's the sawhorse, and there were 2 outboard motors sitting on that, and I liked that. Again, I kind of treated the underpainting of the oil is just slash all this stuff on and then start to embellish and discover the form and then edit things out and try to keep it under control because it's basically chaos when you look at it. And then you're saying, I don't need that. I need to punch that, or I need to do something else. That's I think that's why we go out and paint, is to observe nature and we learn that things that we don't do at a casual glance because we're really into it. And you take it home, redo it as a larger painting, and then you're going through another process of design. It may seem silly to people who aren't painters, or why are you spending your life painting, throwing paint on it? It's inconsequential activity. but personally, uh, it's it's so deeply rewarding that we never tire of the challenges, and
Right.
it doesn't feel like work, and sometimes it is work.
Right. Well, it's interesting that in describing this painting, now, was this was this a studio iteration of something that had been directly observed, or is this a was this done on site?
No, this is studio iteration of an on-site study.
Okay, because it the looking again I see a through line in your work of moving the way you are abstracting things are still demonstrably real, but yeah, you have simplified. I mean, I didn't did Charlie Newman do this same pile of stuff, but at a much higher angle, looking down at it? Because I mean, his was is it was just like fish bones of just chaotic, uh, like jack straws. And this, it feels like you are reducing and reducing and reducing, especially above on the top half of the painting. You're just cutting it down to how you can say the most without devolving into chaos. The each of the shapes feels so considered and so unrepetitive. I look at that, and I don't see any two that are exactly doing the same thing. And you're putting different colors next to each other, different shapes of colors. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, I
You'll take it.
yeah.
You'll accept that. I just,
I was happy with that. I wanted to include that in this interview just because I thought I can't do that with watercolor, and I can't. I don't know that I couldn't do that in egg tempera, but you don't want to build up any impasto or any body in egg tempera because of the cracking that's going to occur. And I think, well, this is what oil paint is good at, so I'm gonna do that.
interesting.
Edit
Okay.
so easy. I can't edit watercolor that much, but this is great for scraping out, painting over, and those sort of things.
It's that's very interesting. That's very wise. That the the medium. It's not just that oil looks cool and you feel like doing an oil painting, but for the process that you're going to be going through, oil lends itself to that. For the process that you want to go through on this one, egg tempera lends itself to that. Very smart guy, Stewart. Smart guy. But now back to our old friend, the watercolor. This apparently is something watercolor is good at. Tell us about it.
Um, it was always surprising to me when I first started doing plein air competitions how many people use oil. I thought it was not the most portable of things to do. It wasn't. It took time to dry, and so to me, the watercolor was the natural outdoor painting uh, medium. I don't believe that today, but after seeing so many great oil painters do what they do. But I've been sticking to watercolor for some time because I think there is something about retaining your light white paper and having light hit the paper and come through the pigment and bounce back into your eyes,
Mhm.
uh, give it a certain brilliance that I find oil having a hard time to do because you have to sort of establish your values in an oil painting to where your lights are, become much more brilliant based on what they're surrounded by. Did that make sense?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, let's just say that
I may just be being stupid here. You may be making perfect sense. Folks out there in internet land, is it making sense to you, or do you want to take another whack at it, Stuart?
let's just say that you put a white paint on a painting. The
Right.
light's not going through it. The chroma in that paint tube
Ah,
is that as much as you're going to get.
Okay.
And so when light falls on it, it's falling on solid white calcium carbonate or titanium.
Got it.
With a piece of paper, light falling on that reflects back, a brilliance of the nature of the paper. So if you tone that in any way, it's just a light tea stain of color, you're modifying the reflectance of the
Yeah.
painting. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You were making sense. You were making sense. Okay.
So this is the beautiful USS United States ocean liner that's been sitting in Philadelphia for a long time, hoping to become a boutique hotel. They're never going to raise enough money for this thing. I worry about what's going to happen to it. I thought it was a beautiful ship, and it's still with us, along with the Queen Mary and that whole golden age of ocean liners. But
Have you ever taken an ocean liner across the Atlantic?
no, I haven't. Cruise ship, I haven't done any of those either.
A friend of mine.
Go on that. I would go on that.
There's like one left that does about 5 trips a year, and a friend of mine just did it. It wasn't that expensive. I really want to do it. I really want to do it.
Let me know if you're going to do that. We'll
All right.
we'll plan something.
We'll do a little. I'll bring the squeegee. Whole lot of horizon paintings. Yeah, there's another one. I'm going to use cerulean today. A little cerulean.
Charlie, a giant iceberg. What can you do with that?
Oh, that would be good. Okay. Anyway, so this is this Baltimore, Philadelphia? You said?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Okay. Now I find painting boats extremely difficult because of those compound curves that they have. Any hints for us stupid people about that? Are you just following the shape? I mean, you're just looking at that, and I'm looking at the left-hand side of that boat ship.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any hints? I would say if it's looking funny, just look at the negative shape around it. Can you draw that?
Right.
And that seems sometimes to be easier than if you're trying to identify the dimensions of the form.
Okay.
Like there's a slight curve to the white datum line along the bow that goes back in space. And if you can't quite see that while you're looking at the actual ship, it's just look at the dark mass underneath it, and then the white triangular shape in the far distance there, and say, "Oh, I can see that shape. That's a very simple shape," and then see what relates around it as far as the curvature.
Really good advice. Really good advice. Now, I got a watercolor question for you. I took during the pandemic. I took Andy Evenson's online course, and then the last month I was doing the Sunday paint along with Vlad Yeliseyev.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different techniques. Andy always wets the paper, so the paper is damp as he's putting paint down. Vlad works with totally dry paper. What do you do?
I kind of start dry. I never really wet the whole thing because I feel like I want to use the dryness of the paper to create a sharp edge.
Edge, right?
And I'm still learning different things. Those are both excellent painters to refer to about what they do. I just not quite sure I have a method that way. I kind of think that the background is a layer. My main actors are a layer. That's the buildings and the ship, and then the foreground is another layer. And I sort of think of those in those terms.
Interesting. It's looking at your stuff. Just staring at it right now. I mean, you are such a master of design. The way you're connecting all the foreground shapes or the non boat shapes, it just, and you break it up with those dits and dots of white underneath the mass of the ship. You're an extraordinary painter, Stewart.
Oh, thank you, Charlie. It just seems like sometimes that stuff's just there. You never notice it before. And then when you're painting it, it's like, oh, that's kind of a gift,
Right?
you know.
Right. Well, that's the thing I say about doing it 80 million times is that I think it makes ourselves aware of those. We become aware of those gifts. It's not really. It's not that we have become so smart that we can now see these gifts. It's just that the kind of the subconscious is willing to accept them and incorporate that into the design.
Well said.
Okay, what now? This is absolutely beautiful. Again, just the symphony of edges that you've got. You letting go of, you've got an object, a windmill in a landscape, and you totally let go of the edge of the windmill against the far middle ground. And then the sharpest shapes are the water and the mountain in the background, and then the webs on the windmill. This is a stunning painting. Talk about this for a bit.
Oh, you're right about that. The edges, and I think that's where watercolor does have these nice little surprises, or they call them accidents, things like that. But you really want to be open to what opportunities start to show up when you're painting in watercolor, because it's a living thing while you're painting. The pigments flowing, and you're aware of how much water you've got and how much pigment you've got, and you might start out a painting with an intention of, this is how I want it to end up, and you go that way, but you might have a tendency to miss what opportunities show up in the painting while you're doing it. And that's the fun thing. I think a workshop I took with Charles Reed a long time ago was that he's splattering paint, he's doing different things. He's not very concerned about what it's going to end up looking like. He thinks of the whole process as a 60s term is called, this is just a happening.
Mm-hmm.
And he would sometimes I think the splatters were a little bit too much, but he was trying to preserve the freshness and the cleanliness and the watery nature of watercolor. And the subject would just happen to be an innocent bystander. You could throw that paint on any subject, and it wasn't ever about the subject. It was always about the nature of paint.
Mm-hmm.
And I included this because I like to do travel. I like to do workshops, and this was from workshop I'm conducting in Sicily. And I think that there's a lot of value in leaving your home and headed out and seeing different things to put yourself in uncomfortable situations or new, novel situations, and explore those things, with your plein air work or sketching.
Mm-hmm.
So,
beautiful work, though, Stuart. Beautiful work.
Yes.
Do you have any more? Do you have another workshop coming up over there? Or?
I'm doing one in April, and that is a go. I've got room for one more cottage, I think, if somebody happened to be listening and was interested to contact. Can I do it?
Cool. All right. Well, we'll put up the website at the end, but
Okay.
Keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. If you're looking for something to do in April, you can go paint like this. Oh, now this feels to me like that. What's that great beach painting of like the is it Red Grooms? It's that kind of Ashcan school seaside stuff.
Red Groove's a little after Ashcan. I think I know who you're talking about. Is it? Well, I like him, Maurice Pendergast.
Yeah, okay, I can go with that.
He kind of flattens the perspective and stacks, these people up, and he's always thinking about the sort of the design. What is the design of the page, and what does this color do next to that color? And I was trying to channel that. This was from a sketch in a sketchbook that I did in 1983 when I took some. It's amazing what I did with little money back then. But I'd go. I went to Amsterdam. Was able to rent a barge on one of those, the Amstel River, which is right in the heart of Amsterdam. And for $150 a month, I lived in a working barge with the straw on the floor and pretty much lived on cheese and beer and sausages. But I was when I took the train out to the beach, and it was just thick with people, and there's windsurfers, and there's all these different cafes, like the one you see in the center there, separate their space with old doors. And nowadays they have matching umbrellas that define what every vendor's space is like, and it's very, very groomed and very policed. And this was a little more chaotic, and I absolutely loved it. There's somebody changing clothes in the shadows in the foreground. And it gave me a chance to do a little storytelling, but at the same time, it was since I only had the line work to go by,
right.
I thought I would turn it into again, how to create order out of chaotic elements and bring it together. I mean, it's still fascinated by popular public beaches for that very reason. It's very, very electric colors nowadays, and I know it's just kind of fun.
It's
a problem to solve. Yeah.
It's let's talk a little about I see there's some very interesting design elements that you've got going on here. There are these shallow triangles pointing up. There's the roof in the foreground. There's the repeating shadow motif along the seawall, and then the dominant structure in the center. All of them use that pointing device. Was that something that you were like, I'm using this pointing device? Well, I see more and more as I look at it. Or is that really kind of what it was like? Was that those gifts showing up again?
Again, I think you make a great tour guide in a museum to point out things that maybe was not intentional. I think I wanted to define that the seawall is actually about a waist high wall, and like you do that with devices like these shadows. It also would break up the space. It would be too big of a big vanilla tan shape against all the other little bits and pieces on the right hand side of the painting. So that's why I want to break it up into smaller pieces for that reason. The triangles, I wasn't thinking, but I can see how I could do a painting with just umbrella shapes,
right,
and tent shapes, and all that, and play those off of circular shapes.
Right.
It would be a fun thing. And I don't when I'm trying to do these imaginative things, and I want to do more of them because I've got tons of old sketches from 50 years ago that say, well, I made notes, but I never made the painting. And why don't you try and see what you would do?
Right.
I wouldn't, probably the clouds in the sky turned out, I like the way they turned out. Ordinarily, I was taught to just do these wet skies and use a tissue to punch out your clouds. And this was done in a little more deliberate way. These are going to be here, these are going to be there, this will be that value, this will be that amount of chroma. And I build up the transparency, build up the tones with painting over, a dry thing. And it gives it a crispness and a certain energetic feeling in the sky.
Yeah, it all works together really, really well. We're getting several people think this should become a jigsaw puzzle. Um, it would be a terrific jigsaw puzzle. It's a very good idea. I think you
Yeah,
should.
I would consider that. I think I'd have a fun time putting that together. Uh,
Yeah, great.
yeah.
And now, demolition, the unbuilding of America. Sort of sad statement there. But
Well, yeah, this was at a plein air event in Richmond, Virginia, when they used to do that. And I was out looking for a nocturne thing to do, and they were knocking down this old building. It looked like it was done in the 20s, and it had some. Was it a stunning building? I don't know, but it had some really nice old deco lines to it, and I'm sure it was going to be replaced with a perfectly acceptable glass and
mhm.
precast concrete monstrosity. I could be wrong about that. I hope I didn't offend anybody. But there was I just thought, one, it's like, okay, this stuff is going, something else is taking its place. And um, I do think of it as losing a little bit of our urban texture
Mhm.
when we do that. I think you feel that same way about agricultural uh,
Sure.
bits, and I think there's a certain nostalgia feeling that you get in your work, Charlie, that talks about a lot of things to a lot of people. Um, Maybe there's I don't see this is as a anything that I'm emotionally attached to, but I was drawn to the drama of the smoke, the rising dust, and there's a sort of violence being done to this, you know, almost frail structure that has, it's completely vulnerable.
Right.
And then the water spouts trying to keep the dust down at the bottom uh, were formed an interesting horizontal. It's basically a vertical and a horizontal. That's
Right.
the composition. And that clock on the far left was there, and it actually, to me, it had a certain poetics about the passing of time,
Right.
and plus it was a counterbalance to the mechanical arm that's piercing the form.
Right.
Uh, that doesn't occur to me at first. First, I was just fascinated with the destruction and the demolition site, and then I set up my easel. And as I'm painting, your mind tends to go on, and I began to see and feel other things about it.
Right. Well, that again is I think the fact of having done so many paintings that this subtle language of, oh, this connects to this references this, so stuff starts getting played up because it fits, and that's what in totality makes the identifiable style of a painter. I mean, it's what you are choosing to emphasize and how you are choosing to emphasize it. Um, Now this you go really. There's a lot of uh, extreme light dark contrast in this. With the darkest darks of the sky, the inky darkness of the sky, and then it's almost whiteness of paper. I mean, it does seem toned somewhat, where the light is hitting the building as it's being torn down. Um, and that, of course, heightens the drama as well. The range, the tonal range. Interesting.
Yeah, getting darks, really darks in watercolor is it's a matter of layering and having a pretty thick, loaded brush with stuff. I had to enhance that after the fact.
Oh, really?
Do that. Uh, yeah, it's just that it doesn't dry fast enough. You have to let it really be bone dry and do a quick wash over it so you're not disturbing the pigment underneath it, and then let that go. And then it requires a little bit of masking out and
Ugh.
the edges.
Seems like a opportunity for utter chaos. I would be terrified. So
No,
thank you for the tour through this work, Stuart. So um, talk a little about what you've got coming up and what we should know about Stuart World.
well, I'm looking forward to being here at home during plein air Easton. I got into that, and
But
I
to be clear, you live in Easton, Maryland. You'll be home during
yeah,
plein air Easton because you will be participating in plein air Easton.
right. It's why I moved here. It gives me a one-up edge. um, but no, I like Easton very much, and it doesn't matter when the event comes along. I still get kind of worked up with all the great talent that's here and the things that they discover that I don't see when I'm here. And that's one of the things I like about the plein air event all over the country is where people come to your town. And I think that's what the collectors and patrons enjoy too. Is that I walk past that every day,
Right.
and I paint that, and that person painted did a beautiful job of it. Um, I think it's fine to do water lilies. I do them myself, but it's kind of like if you're in a certain place, you really want to. I think what's your response to it? To the
Mhm.
place you're at. Uh,
Right.
like we were in Texas, and there is a look and feel to all the flora and fauna that you can get that anybody from that area would say, I think I even know where that ranch is.
Right.
And so that's the magical part of
Right.
painting for people.
We-
I'll be in the Smokies for the first time, so I'm
That's a
looking
great
forward to that.
Yeah.
And here, that's a great event, and was invited to go to Sedona, which I've been to, uh, but I've never painted there, and so I'll be doing that. There's a lot going on in the looking up at my schedule on the dry erase board. Um,
Well, you've got the one cabin for the April. And then any other big destination workshops?
no, that's it for the year. Is the Sicily one, and I teach at the local academy from time to time. But I do want to continue to do week-long painting holidays, as they call them.
Excellent.
I think it's just a great thing to get away from what you're doing, even if you're a hobby painter and
Right.
you're not interested in being a professional painter. It's a great way to not be in the cocoon of a tour bus,
Right.
but to see the country and the people and the food and everything else in that context. And you're usually very well appreciated and received by people that walk by and see what you're painting, no matter how competent it is. It's enjoyable and entertaining for them as well.
Right.
So,
Well, Stuart, this has been a wonderful little tour through your work. It's been great talking with you, and thanks so much for joining us. So,
well, thank you, Charlie. I appreciate
and
it.
everyone else out there, we have a next week. We'll be back for some more reasonably fine art talk. Thank you so much for being part of this. See you soon. Bye bye.